Hi, I'm Amy. I'm Julia's mom.
I'm Simon Powley. I'm Julia's father.
I'm Sophia Powley, and I'm Julia's sister.
Before Julia was injured, she had a long volleyball career. It probably started when she was in the fourth or fifth grade, playing, recreation and then going into school and club ball. And with each year, she played more and more and dedicated more and more time to it and got to be a very accomplished player. Being on the court made her very happy, whether it was playing for a school team or playing on her club team. She developed a really tight relationship with her club and with the directors and the coaches there, and learned a lot and did athletic training in addition to regular practice. Spent a lot of time at tournaments. And she became one of the top players in her club. Also made varsity as a sophomore and ended up getting a lot of playing time for being an underclassman. With each year, just became more and more dedicated to the point where she loved it. Absolutely, volleyball was her, and she wanted to, had aspirations of playing in college.
Julia was Julia. She was someone who was willing to work very hard for her dreams. I think she found a niche in volleyball that she felt like she could excel and use as an outlet for herself, and do well at, and become a leader, which I think that she really wants to do and can do. And so I think she found the ability to work hard, strive, try to bring girls together as an outlet for volleyball. And I think that who she was all of those things. A very, very hard worker, someone who tried to demonstrate leadership, tried to demonstrate to others what they should do and emulate behaviors of giving up for the team, sacrificing for the team, listening to the coach, bringing a positive attitude, trying to bring out the best for others. And her dreams were very much as what they are now. I think that she wants to excel in life. I think she wants to be a leader. I think she wants to do the right thing in her heart. And I think from a volleyball perspective, I think her goal was to play in college. From my perspective, Julia put a lot of that weight, as she does with everything, on her own shoulders. When I wanted her to play volleyball and sports, and her mom encouraged her to do that, was really to learn life lessons of how to be a part of a team, how to work hard, how to be involved in extracurricular activities, and those kind of things. So, the excel part of it, where she did very well and had those dreams of college, just evolved, I think, as part of that process.
I think Julia was particularly a very happy person, a very energetic leader, and always had her best outlook for people, and most of the time spent most of her hours at the gym. And if she wasn't at the few times she wasn't at the gym, she was with her friends or she was with us. So she really was a busy person. I feel like that's what fueled her, was she was so busy with everything. She felt like she had a plan for herself, and she felt very connected and very happy with her life the way it was going. And her dreams were, I don't think at the time before her injury, she really didn't have an idea of what she wanted to do in college. So she didn't really have any exact dream other than to play volleyball in college.
Prior to Julia getting injured, I talked to another parent who had a son that had an injury that ended up, kind of being a career-ending injury. And she said, I wish the last time I saw him play was going to be the last time I saw him play. And the same holds true for me, because although Julia came back and played some after her rehab, it was not the same as it had been. And so I wish there was, times that I wouldn't say I wasn't watching seriously, but I was thinking, I need to be home grading my papers. I missed, school, and I wish I would have known I wished I would have cherished more time. And though I enjoyed it, but anyway, but it's really hard to realize that's the last time you're gonna see your kid play really competitively. And on the day in Florida in June 25th of 2018, it was just like any normal tournament, and we'd played so many tournaments, and I just never in my wildest dreams thought that she would sustain an injury that she had, a full ACL and meniscus, because if you've ever been to a large volleyball tournament, and I've been to many with thousands of girls, you rarely see somebody running around in an ACL brace. It's just not a common injury for that sport. And so she's kind of one of the few that has had that happen to her in her, junior career. And so I was thinking it was just a knee sprain. Honestly, it came down wrong, and maybe she sprained her ankle or something like that. But as the day progressed, and the next day I knew it wasn't. It was more. And so we were kind of rushing around to find a place where we could have her evaluated, so we knew what we were dealing with. And the news was bad. Having an ACL tear would have been bad, but adding the meniscus and soft tissue to it, that is really impactful. And so fast forward 2 weeks, and here you're in surgery, having it repaired, and being told that, it'll be maybe 8 to 10 months before you might see, practice on a, regular practice on a court again.
Julia, on that day, was in Orlando at a volleyball tournament, the Nationals. This was the first time ever in any one of her volleyball matches that I wasn't able to be there due to work. And so I got the call from her mom letting me know what happened. I didn't know what to think at the time. I try to put one foot in front of the other in terms of gaining information, and all I knew is that she was injured. I did not know the severity of it at the time. So, I kind of reacted as kind of a wait and see, and tried to remain calm for everybody else.
That day in June, she tore her ACL and meniscus and sprained her MCL. She was in Orlando for a volleyball tournament, and it was the first game, the first set, I believe, of the first game of Nationals, her sophomore year. And she was really excited. She was telling me the whole week how excited she was for this tournament, how she was going to get looked at, and it was her sophomore year, and she was excited. I didn't really know how to feel because Dad had told me Mom had called him, and we didn't really know exactly what was going on at the time, so we kind of just tried to take it in, but we didn't really take it in because for myself, I couldn't really believe it was true. So it didn't really hit me when I was first told. So we just had to wait for the best outcome, and they called us throughout the day and just telling us what the possibilities were, when she's going to the doctor, and what they thought were going to happen.
So during Julia's year of recovery, I would say that although it was hard at times, and you knew, as a parent, she was missing out, and she knew she was missing out, obviously, you kind of come to a little bit of an acceptance for it, because there's really nothing you can do except for continue to do the rehab and the exercises. And as a parent, it was more of a matter of keeping her involved, even if she wasn't on the court, keeping her involved in the team and in volleyball in some way. And so I think Julia had to kind of see herself in a different role, one of being more of a support for her teammates instead of being the one out there that they might be supporting or cheering for. There's many ways you can be involved in a team. And when you're injured, you have to find that spot, that niche that's going to work for you. And sometimes it's really hard, I think, to not want to walk away and just not want to throw in the towel, especially when you know it's going to be probably a year. But you learn a lot about yourself, not just in the realm of volleyball, but also in the realm of life, of what do you do when things get hard, when you're put in a tough position, when what you knew has completely changed. How do you change to still fit and to still contribute. And so I think that year, Julia grew as a person in a lot of ways, matured, and had to put herself sometimes behind others at school ball and club, and just support the team in general and not just be thinking about herself.
I think it didn't affect me other than I was just focused on her getting well and recovering from the injury, and to try to do my best to support her. That's how it affected me. So, I never let it kind of sink in, the severity of it or the challenges. I just wanted to help her get through it. So that's just how I kind of compartmentalized and dealt with it. I don't think she really, I think she changed in terms of getting more lonesome. I mentioned she was unable to do the activities that she wanted to do, especially extracurricular, and became more sedentary in terms of having to be more on the couch, at least at first, before she got into, rehab. And then, I saw her work very hard to get back with her goals in mind to try to achieve and get back to where she was physically, and work really hard at that. I was real proud of her during that process.
During her year of recovery, I saw a dramatic change in who Julia was as a person. She was no longer that busy girl anymore. She was no longer playing volleyball. She wasn't really hanging out with friends because she couldn't really get out and do everything that all her friends wanted to do just because she physically wasn't capable to do. And being so busy with volleyball, before that she didn't really have time for friends. So when this happened, she didn't find herself with many. And I felt that made her feel kind of lonesome and more sad and put into a worse place than she was before, because she realized volleyball really was her life and she didn't really have a big life outside of that. And as a family, or just by myself, it was really hard for her to watch, to go from this really happy, energetic, busy girl to this girl that didn't even want to go out on a Friday night and just sit in her room, just process everything. And she just became a dramatically different person emotionally. It was really hard to watch.
So another thing that happens when you have an injury and you're out for a long period of time and they give you a time frame for your recovery is you think automatically when that time frame is up, it's going to be just like it was. And that's not the case necessarily. So that time came and you thought, back to practice, she's going to be starting again. It's going to be awesome. And that's not the way it was. You can't miss a year of your sport and expect to jump right back in unless you're maybe some kind of phenomenal, incredible athlete that has this natural gift. People have gotten better while you've been sitting out, especially when you're, in those older teenage years, and it gets very competitive and very athletic. So I think, we as parents and, or at least me as a parent, and Julia was expecting to just kind of slip back into the normal volleyball life and routine, and that didn't happen. She still needed to work on things, and her knee wasn't really 100%. She could play, but not like she was able to before. So I think that was hard and it was difficult. And we moved, at the end of that year, we moved back from Ohio to Washington, and she was put on a team that was really good, won the state championship, and did not get a lot of playing time. Now, she was on another team, a team that wasn't as talented. She definitely would have gotten more playing time, but that wasn't the case. So I think there's a level of acceptance you have to have there too, that either, this is kind of the way it's going to be for me, and if you're not happy with that, you have to work 10 times harder than anybody else that's out there to maybe even get back, and still you might not be able to get back.
I think when she was clear, she came back. I think it was an adjustment for her to not being able to physically dominate the way that she had before. I think it was very natural. I don't think that's something you recover from extremely quickly. At least for her, I think it took her a while to get back to where she was. And I think that was discouraging to her, that she could not lead by example the way that she had before, or, on her team specifically, when they needed an out or they needed someone to step up to win the match, she was always the one to do that. And I think there were times, especially coming back, she just physically wasn't able to do that for a while. And so it was probably slower coming back than what she expected. And so I don't think she was the same player, although I saw her dramatically improve over the year and a half. How I saw her change was just her confidence level. I saw her second guessing herself and wondering about herself more, which was new. I hadn't seen her really, especially in the volleyball court, her ever do that. It was very coaching, learning in the moment, and trying to excel at things. And I saw her pause for the first time, or get in her head more than probably she should have. So I saw her change in terms of confidence level and what she wanted to do. That's where I saw the biggest change.
I think you came into the season very headstrong and you believed in yourself. You were just going to push yourself to be the player you really weren't anymore. You were trying to push yourself and overwork yourself to become the player you used to be, which in this situation, you just weren't that player anymore. And so you came in very headstrong, very highly thinking of yourself, because you thought the higher you thought of yourself, the easier it would be going back into this process and making you play better in a way. And the first tournament you were back, it was the Nationals, same Orlando tournament. And I could see how in that way that bothered you, how you're going back to the same place where it had all went down, and that's where you're starting back off again, which I could see was mentally tough for you. And you were noticeably struggling because you really weren't in the place you wanted to be, and we all saw that. You wanted to be in a way higher place than you were going into this. And you had become very headstrong, more hard, not really sad anymore, but more angry and frustrated.
Yeah, so when she came back to Washington, it was an interesting process because I don't know if she understood how good she was. And again, I think that went to the confidence comment that I made in the last question. When she came in, the feedback from the other parents and the other kids were how good she was and how intimidating that they were by her because they had a new player to push her like that. And I don't know that she ever felt that way. I think she felt because she was still working back from the injury and wasn't 100%. She was getting very close, but she wasn't 100%, that she somehow doubted, and she was new to the team. And so I think the fact that they didn't look at her as a leader or come to her for advice, again, went to her confidence level, that maybe she felt like they didn't respect her or didn't appreciate her in ways that they genuinely did, and that was evident from her leadership ability. And I know through her coaches, the leadership ability that she had and the way she made her, the way she reacted and handled not being a leader on the team as a senior and coming in new and being on the bench more and having to earn that spot. I saw her change a little bit from a confidence perspective. She never let it show on the court, and I don't know that the kids see it, but you can kind of tell that stuff with someone. And so I think it was just a loss of confidence more than loss of ability in terms of how I saw her change.
When you moved to Washington, I think your ability to be headstrong and the frustration and all that kind of went away as that season ended after that tournament. And I think you more realized what your place was on a team now. Obviously that you weren't the player you were before and going into a team that was supposed to be best in state that year. And going into that, I could see how you mentally struggled with that because you wanted to be in that game so bad, but you knew you weren't going to be because of the circumstances. And I think that put you in a better mentality because you knew what your job was going into this and you exceeded in doing that job and knowing where you were. And you weren't pushy on it. You weren't trying to be somewhere you weren't. You really just accepted your role and became more mentally okay with who you were now.
So after Julia's senior year of school volleyball was over, after she was on the Tahoma team and she, they won the state championship, like I mentioned, and she was a huge supporter of those girls. They had the best bench in the whole state, I think. There was so much energy there. I couldn't decide if I wanted to watch the bench or watch the game or watch the court because they were both amazing. And at the time she'd been talking with a junior college coach about playing, still wasn't 100% in jumping and her ability to jump and also just agility on the court in general. And we had conversations with her about if you really want to get back to that level and be able to play in college, you're going to have to step it up. And it was some hard conversations. She, I think in her mind, wanted to play, but then maybe wasn't committed to doing all the work. Because like I said, once you've been hurt, you've got to work 10 times harder than everybody else to try to catch back up. And although she loved volleyball and still loves volleyball, I think the love was not there enough to do what she needed to do in order to play. And so decided kind of pretty close to when the season was over that she would decide not to, especially didn't want to impact the recruiting of that coach or who he was trying to bring on, and wanted to be honest about it. So at the time she made the decision to stop playing. And although I think at some level she accepted that, it was a huge loss to her identity and who she was and who she'd been for years and how she identified volleyball with herself and her personality. And it's actually a very hard time for her. And it was winter here, and it was just dark, and and it was she I would say she got depressed, and she questioned her worth because she didn't have this to attach it to any longer, and had to reset herself as a person and think of, well, what is next for me? Maybe this door is kind of closed. Maybe I'll play some recreation sometime, but this door, as far as this being the serious thing that's almost like a job that I've done for years, is done. Now what? And that's taken a lot of time, and looking into herself and thinking, what is next for me? That can be exciting or it can be scary for people. But she's gone down that path, and I think she's in a pretty good spot, and she's done some acceptance. But mental things with injuries take time, and I think people think about the rehab and the physical part of it and the pain and getting back and practicing again, but the mental game that goes on with when something like that happens to you is just as hard or even harder, I would say. And I think as parents and as athletes, we don't think about that. We don't think about mentally what's going on in an athlete's head when something like this happens.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think the reason Julia told me she didn't want to commit is just it was painful, and the joy had somewhat left the game for her. And so I think that's why she didn't commit to the community college. And I think that was it. I mean, from my perspective, having the scholarship just wasn't worth taking away from my 4-year collegiate experience. And so my goal changed with maybe playing rec for her or earning a place onto a college team in the future if she wanted to do that. And unfortunately, she just hasn't taken that path. She's decided to give up. So
I think you didn't commit because it was too painful for you to be on that court and see you just push for something that you feel like wasn't a part of you, was a part of you, but it wasn't where you needed to be. And I think you believed that there was better things going for you other than being in a community college, just trying to push for something that truly wasn't there anymore. The game will always be a part of you, obviously, but being a player isn't a part of it anymore. And I feel like you came to terms with that.